All right. It's been a couple of weeks, but we are now ready for Genesis chapter 21. We are just speeding our way through, and now we get to our second patriarch, right? So, any questions or comments before we hop into Genesis 21? I know it's been a couple of weeks, but anybody got anything? All right, then let's look at Genesis chapter 21. My first paragraph is verses 1 through 5. So Genesis 21, 1 through 5. Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore him. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. So, what do you notice? They were just a little bit old. 90 and 100 is kind of old.
Better have big legs for running after that boy.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd want to be chasing after. It's hard enough at 46 to chase after our 3-year-old grandson. I don't think I'd want to do it at twice that age.
That's what I was.
What you got, Kaylee?
Do we actually know that 100 is old, or like?
Okay.
Because time is could be. I just honestly don't know the answer.
So she brings up a very good point. Do we know that at this point 100 is old?
Because those other people are like 900.
Prior to the flood, everyone was living extremely long lives. But I don't know. Does anybody have a copy of the long sheet I gave you back in the fall? I know we'll get to it here in a couple, at this rate, a couple of weeks.
Here.
Does it say, can you read how long Abraham actually lived? Find his little line.
Oh, I don't have my class.
Let me borrow it real fast. Okay. Abraham lived to be 175. So.
But people back then.
So 175 is how old Abraham was when he passed away. So if we put it into perspective, a little bit of math, 100 versus 175, that's 4/7. If the average person today lives, let's say 85, then
Jesus' time, the men typically only lived to be 35 to 40 before they passed away.
I can't do the math off the top of my head.
48.
About 48 years old. So I guess technically, in a ratio, he's about my age. But I'm telling you, I don't really want to have a kid right now. I mean,
But it's still not 100.
he is, I believe scripture, he's actually 100 years old. But relatively speaking, he's like mid to late 40s right now. And of course, I know a lot of people who have their first kid in their 40s. I think they're crazy, but I had a friend of mine who he got married later in life, and the woman he married already had a child, and so they weren't planning on anything, and he had his first child at 61. I told him he was nuts, but that's okay. But it's a good question to ask. We see that as old, but we're not putting it into the perspective of how humanity is living at this time. Prior to the flood, God says that, his spirit won't contend with humanity forever, and they're going to be about 120 years. So we see humanity contracting down within that time frame. And of course, for us today, you get somebody that becomes a centenarian, and we feel like that's a long life. But even though we have all the advancements we do and medicine and doctors and hospitals, we're not living 175 years. I mean, I think, if I remember correctly, in the 1900s, the longest verifiable age span, there was a lady in France who lived to be like 128 or something like that. And in recent history, that's like the maximum. So, but yeah, it's a good thing to keep in perspective. What else do you notice in this passage? Or what other question you want to ask? You got something, Bob?
Well, I was just going to say, if Abraham was 48 to 50 or something like that, by today's standards, then Sarah would have been 40.
At least.
And in contrast, there was a lady on Jeopardy last night who had a baby at age 50. So
that's really starting to push it, even by today's standards. So what else do you notice in this stuff? There's some other key things.
Then with like the number 8 days, that's not like one of those special numbers. So why do you think it's 8 days?
So I believe that goes back to chapter 17. It's chapter 17, verse 12. For the generations to come, every male among you who is 8 days old must be circumcised.
Okay, but still the same question.
So, the way I always heard this explained, it is the first day of their second week. The first week of life, the number of children who died in the first week was pretty high. And so you had a boy circumcised on the first day of their second week, because then at that point, that's when you gave them their name. So it's like acknowledging that they lived to the point where this is someone who is within God's covenant. Does that make sense? But the other side of that is this is saying very clearly that right now, Abraham is following God's command. If you remember the last time we met, we had this discussion, and I'm really kind of stuck on this, and I think this is an important thing to realize. Righteousness, at least as we've read it in Genesis, right, means believing God and doing what he says, or following him. It doesn't have to do with doing it right. It doesn't have to do with it doing it perfectly. It simply means believing God and doing what he says. And wouldn't you agree? I mean, isn't that kind of where we've come to? And so in these first 5 verses, we see God's faithfulness. He's doing what he promised. And we see Abraham's righteousness. He is believing God and following God's commands. Is that what you guys are seeing? So, in spite of what he might have done in the past, in this moment, Abraham is being righteous. Anything else you notice?
And its name being slapped.
Okay. So Isaac means laughter. Let's read the next paragraph and then we'll deal with this. Because there's at least 2 thoughts on this. So 6 and 7. Sarah said, God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. And she added, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. Notice she says he's old, She doesn't say she's old. What else do you notice though? If you add that in, anybody notice anything? I'm going to ask us to do something I don't normally like to do.
Okay.
Because I want us to talk about Isaac's name, okay? Names have meaning, right? And especially biblical names, even if we can't pronounce them, they have meaning and purpose. Most people say that the name Isaac means laughter, and it's because, as Sarah's saying, that God has given her joy. Some people point back to when the three visitors visited Abraham and said, "You will have a son a year from now," and Sarah laughs. That's part of the reason why she names him Isaac. I had a seminary professor, and she said she would never publicly admit this on camera, but I'm doing it. And Crystal, who's from my former church that we walked through Genesis like this, I told that group this as well. Coming to today. Well, first let's ask this question. What do we know about Isaac? The kind of man he becomes? Just generalize. What do you remember about Isaac? Anybody?
Traveled back to his father's family to find a wife.
No, he didn't. Abraham sent a servant to go back and get a wife for Isaac. But his wife did come from Sarah's family. What else do you know about Isaac? How does Isaac relate to his sons? You guys know the story of Jacob and Esau, and what do we get told about it?
Favored Esau.
He favored Esau. What else? Do you remember anything else? It said he had poor eyesight, and he got easily tricked, right? That you know of. Does Isaac really make a whole lot of decisions? Of all three of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Isaac makes the fewest decisions. If anything, it almost seems like everybody else does things for him. Do you get what I'm saying? He's got poor eyesight. He plays favorites. He's got the favorite one that he just wants to deal with that one, and he kind of disregards the other one. And he's easily tricked. And his wife, we're going to read, she kind of manipulates him, and he gets manipulated by other people. And he's not really much of a leader. He follows his dad's example. We're going to see that a couple times, and not in the good ways. Bring all that. Okay, put a pin in that. What do we know about if you give birth at older ages? What's the concern in that? Say that louder. The possibility of genetic defects goes up the older you are when you get pregnant. What did you say, Wes? Same thing you were saying? My professor says you cannot prove this from scripture, but you could easily build the circumstantial evidence case to say Isaac is a Down's baby. And if you've ever been around somebody with Down syndrome, they are the happiest, go-lucky, kind people. They tend to struggle with eyesight issues. They tend to play favorites. They make people laugh. Yes.
Saw a video this week about Down syndrome, and some countries are pushing to have those babies aborted. And the speaker said Down syndrome children are not abnormal. They are acting like Jesus. They're joyful, they're loving, they do all those things that Jesus did. We are the abnormal ones for judging and excluding. So, just along those thoughts, something to think about.
She said there's no way to prove it, but if it was true, what does it say about our God? That he would have one of his patriarchs, one of his chosen big three, be someone that our world today, and in many places in Europe, they're even euthanizing them as adults because they're like, it's, we just need to get rid of that. And I'm like, that is so evil. But my professor said you can't prove it, and there's nothing that says for certain, but it paints an interesting picture. That one, I mean, if Sarah's that much older and Abraham's that much older, the likelihood we know today that happens goes way up the older you get. He doesn't, if you know anyone with Downs, I've had a number of them in my churches. They're wonderful people, but they can have a level of autonomy, but most of the time they're kind of dependent on the goodwill of the people around them, and they're kind of gullible and in the best way possible. They got great hearts. They just make everybody else happy. But now, this is one of those things where I'm telling you, this is a Samuel Paget theory. But I like what it says about our God. That our God might fulfill his promise. It might be done in a way that some people would say, is that really a blessing? And yet God says, no, I'm going to work through this. And I'm going to bring my kingdom to bear on it. What do you think about that? Any thoughts?
A reminder that when we do see people who are different from us, whose creeds or worship is different from us, that we need to understand and receive the fact that God is using them just as much as he's using us.
God will use anyone who says yes to him. Anyone.
I'm not going to say that.
Well, yes. God will also use the people who don't say yes to him, but I'm saying God wants to work through anyone who will say yes to him. God will bring his kingdom to bear through people that we might disregard. God will, and to a point, to those of us online right now or in this room, there is nothing going on in your life that God cannot overcome to use you for his glory. Period. Exclamation point. Any other thoughts? All right. Well, now that we've had our high point for the month, I guess, it's time to delve back into things, right? We can't let it be good for too long. Verse 8 through 10 is my next paragraph. So let's read. The child grew and was weaned, and on the day Isaac was weaned, Abraham held a great feast. But Sarah saw that the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham was mocking, and she said to Abraham, get rid of that slave woman and her sons, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac. We got along pretty good for about 7 verses. What do you notice?
If Isaac was indeed a Downs, it would be easy for Ishmael to make fun of him.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't really put that part in there, but yeah. Anything else to notice in this? Go for it.
It wouldn't be unusual with Ishmael being a stepchild to realize that he's not the chosen one. So he's gonna retaliate against the chosen one and rebel.
Oh my, yes. Even if this other theory isn't true, what you said is absolutely true. What else do you notice? Not to let the ladies off the hook, but does Sarah take any responsibility for her part in the fact that Ishmael even exists?
Well, she made him do it.
Nope. She pushed him to it. Now, he did it. It was his actions, but. And now all of a sudden she thinks, no, get rid of that. It's your fault, Abraham. We haven't learned anything about pushing blame, have we? What you got, Kayleen?
Is like a teenager at this point, and it as it would be a toddler, not even, maybe 3.
Somewhere in there, yes.
I had a 17-year-old makes fun of creep.
Well, he's still gonna be threatened by that child, because he knows he's not the chosen one.
Right?
A lot of 17-year-old.
Oh, that's 3.
Yes, yes, they do.
So I'm just gonna ask the question. What's that say about Ishmael's parenting?
Not good.
Wait a minute.
With you, John.
No, my parents were pretty good parents, and all us siblings still make fun of each other all the time.
Okay, so good point.
For like a mean way, because
But-
mean way
But-
is different than me.
I mean,
Your parents?
Siblings are siblings. Fair point. We're gonna, well, I will lay off of Abraham, Sarah, and and Hagar's parenting styles. We don't know what they might have done the best job they knew how. And I mean, Hagar was warned that Ishmael was gonna be a wild donkey of a man, so he's proven it, even as a teenager. And they're siblings. But your point's not wrong either. You know, he thinks that he should be he's a firstborn son. And this little nibbling, snotty brat of a toddler is taking my place? Notice how Sarah refers to Hagar.
The slave woman.
That Egyptian slave woman. Anything she can bring up to slander her, she does.
You can't put 2 women in the same house.
Is this the
Amen and amen.
second time Sarah's trying to get rid of her?
Since the second time that we know of, the second recorded time.
This was the demand, though, the other one wasn't. Right?
I mean, the last time, Hagar goes running into the desert with her about 13-year-old son but God sees her and stops her. Anything else? Any other thoughts? Read the next paragraph.
One thing,
Go for it.
the other time whenever she's pointed Hagar sin away, Hagar was mocking her. But now she's picking on Sarah's son.
So,
Mama bears will come up for
What?
Yeah. You bet.
Hagar is not the one doing it, but maybe because Hagar was picking on them when, her son was young, do you think that maybe Ishmael is just apple tree?
I think that situation just bred tension.
So what was said earlier, I'm just going to tell a very fast story. When we were about ready to have Blake, the son who comes on Sunday morning, my dad said he was finally going to build my mom a house. He had promised her he was going to do so. About they're 20 years in, he finally, gets ahead enough that he's doing it. He offers to sell me the house I grew up in. Dad says, I can have this house up in about 3 months. So if you want to move in, you can save your rent money and we'll get the house put up and then we'll move out into the new house and you can take the house. And I'm thinking, that's a wonderful idea. I hated living in Evansville. I hated being in the city. I was making no money, working at Olive Garden, waiting tables. And I went home and I told my wife, we're moving. Not my finest moment as a husband. I admit it. But I was done. But from my end of the deal, let me just say, I was the young man who didn't know any better. My dad had been around a whole lot longer than I had. He should have known that principle. Do not take 2 households, 2 women, and put them in one house for very long. We laid down 0 ground rules other than we were paying rent and we were going to buy the house when they moved out. It didn't take 3 months to get the house up. Mom and Dad finally moved out 18 months later. And my siblings stayed with me and Melissa and Leah and Blake. And by this point, we had Grant on top of it. To say that that was the lowest point in my wife and my mom's relationship would probably be an understatement. 2 women, 2 matriarchs of a household who have done things on their own, living under the same roof for what was only supposed to be 3 months and turned into 18 went really poorly. So I imagine Abraham is thoroughly regretting any decision he made to follow Sarah's advice some 16, 17 years earlier, but he is saying nothing because he knows better. There's no way you're winning this fight. So I imagine the entire time that he's dealt with Hagar after Ishmael was born, and especially once Sarah finally got pregnant, and then Isaac's born, and Isaac may be 3 years old. I'm certain that he's just thinking, and that's about it. Just say it. I can relate a little bit. What?
He thought everything was fine.
Oh, he knew it didn't matter how fine or not fine it was. He wasn't saying nothing.
Should have pitched a tent or something in the backyard.
I said he didn't. I'm just saying. I might have gone on a lot of hunting trips, and I don't go hunting. Enough fun with it? All right. We'll see how far off I am. 11 through 13 is my next paragraph. The matter distressed Abraham. That's probably an understatement. The matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son. But God said to him, do not be so distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring. Well, not good, but yes, good.
But it makes me feel better about Abraham than he was concerned about.
You can't tell me that Abraham wouldn't be. I mean, there's a lot of Jerry Springer level drama going on in the household, but that doesn't mean he doesn't love his boys. And God promised to bless both. Now, the covenant, the promise, that's all coming through Isaac. But God is going to bless Ishmael. And as a whole, that we know of right now, that's a good thing. We know down the road, it's going to turn into a thorn in the side. But again, Abraham is faithful. Notice that apparently this time Abraham talks to God about it. Because God gives Abraham some instruction, right? Abraham hasn't always talked to God about these things in the past. He just kind of made his own decision. I guess in his old age, he's finally starting to get a little wise. Maybe. Finish.
It actually says that Abraham talked to God.
That's what I was.
It definitely says God talked to Abraham.
Well, he listened to God again.
Okay. Just as a.
Anything else? The next verse doesn't make me feel so good, but we're going to go ahead and go with it. Verse 14. Early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy. She went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba. A skin and some food.
On her back, not boy's back.
On a skin of water, a water skin. On her back, not even the boy's. He's a strapping young man at this point. He could have carried it. I guess she is still technically the slave. Any other thoughts? Huh? This one? Okay. We'll read another paragraph. Verse 15 and 16. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went off and sat down about a bow shot away, for she thought, I cannot watch the boy die. And as she sat there, she began to sob. What do you think? Any thoughts?
Why was he gonna die?
I guess because Abraham didn't give her enough food and water.
But wouldn't you think that she would have been the one to die before the boy?
Yeah.
You'd kind of think so, wouldn't you? What else? I want to look up something. I'm chasing an idea here, but what else? Anybody else got a thought?
Wonder where she's supposed to go. It says she just was wandering in the desert. Where's she supposed to go?
I mean, where do you go whenever you're a slave and now all of a sudden you're on your own, but nobody else is with you but your son? Does she go back to Egypt? I mean, I wouldn't go back to Egypt. Apparently, she was a slave in Egypt to be given to Sarah, so where do you go?
Is this where it says she lifted up her voice and wept? Is that her reaching out to God?
Well, let's read the next paragraph, 17 and 18. I think it'll help clarify a little bit. God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, What is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Hagar leaves her son to die beneath a bush. And she's afraid that nothing's going to come of it. And the last time that something like this happened, she encountered El Lahiroi, the God who sees me. Remember that? Is she calling out to the God who sees me this time? Nope. It's Ishmael who calls out, and God hears. Any thoughts? Go for it, Aaron.
May be irrelevant, but the way it's written, it makes it sound like the boy is a lot younger.
Yeah, they're using this term boy, and yet he's at least 13 or 14 years old. At least. I mean,
And she placed him under the
yeah,
stuff like.
what teenage junior high boy is going to let his mama put him under a bush to die?
Unless they were so parched, dehydrated. I mean, if he is young, he would definitely, his body would not sustain wilderness as well as hers would. So if she was carrying him,
It's just an odd story, isn't it? I mean, right before this, he's a young man who's making fun of a toddler. And now all of a sudden he's a boy. I guess, Deb, is that a little bit of your mama bear thing? No, this is just my boy. It doesn't matter if he's this tall or not, right?
He's supposed to
They're-
lift,
it's your baby.
Always my baby.
she's supposed to lift this boy up, take him by the hand. Tell him he's small.
Yeah, it makes it sound like he's some, second, third grader, not someone who's on the verge of becoming a man by their standards.
maybe that's why he didn't put the water on his back. Maybe he's a smaller boy anyway, and even at an older age.
Scrawny little boy making fun of the little bitty toddler.
Makes sense. Those are the ones.
The ones with the chip on their shoulder, right?
I guess. Oh,
But are you kind of seeing the absurdity of this whole chapter? It doesn't quite make sense, does it?
why is it so specific, 100 yards? Like I'm caught up on 100 yards.
I want to see my son die. Far enough away that you just can't see him. But still close enough that she can hear him cry.
100 yards?
I don't see.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's one side of the football field. That's the straightaway. It's 100 yards. So you could hear him cry. You might not.
He might be screaming for all we know. I mean, if he's a little boy, let's go with the language here. If he's a little boy, I'm sure he's screaming, "Mama!" What you got, Wes?
Well, in my version, it says it was a bow shot.
A bow shot. Yeah, it's about 100 yards, give or take. If you're really good, it could be about 450 yards, but I'm not that good. Bow shot for me might be from here to Aaron. That's about all I can be accurate at.
But it, he becomes an art.
Finish the story, or do you guys got something else? Verse 19. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy as he grew up. He lived in the desert and became an archer. While he was living in the desert of Paran, his mother got a wife for him from Egypt. Thoughts? I was always, not always, I had some friends who were in the military, and they said that as infantrymen, they called the snipers the cowards. Because, they shot people from a distance and didn't actually have to see them. He's an archer. He attacks from a distance. He doesn't actually have to confront people to their face. You almost can see this whole thing playing out here. Maybe his family of origin caused him to realize, I don't think I want to talk to people face to face. I'll just shoot it from a distance and we'll deal with it later. Don't like that, do you, Kayla? It does say he's an archer. I'm just saying, that's what my friend said. You either fight a person to their face and be a man about it, or you slink around in the shadows and you shoot them from a distance.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely, a lot of skill. But I mean, with the family he grew up with, it seems to make sense with everything that was told about him. God said he was going to be a wild donkey of a man. He grew up in the wilderness. If he was about 13 years old, then by the time he becomes an adult, he's been wandering around with just him and his mama. You know, he's probably not got the best social skills, I would just say, perhaps more than likely. Interesting character. Probably not somebody I want to mess with. What you got?
Okay,
Redeem this, please.
and mine is kind of broke down to the old titles, right, in between each thing. So before we move on to this next one, if you take verse 8 all the way to 21.
Yep.
Story within this story. Like, I don't know if I'm hearing the purpose of this story. Like, what's it?
So the wilderness of Paran is southern Middle East. The Ishmaelites, for all practical purposes, become the modern day Arabs. They are desert people. They're known to be, I mean, this is an overgeneralization. Please understand that. I'm admitting that. But they tend to be marauders. They shoot first, ask questions later. After they kill you, then they come up and they ransack your stuff. They don't confront you, they don't rob you, they kill you, then they take your stuff. These are people who are going to be a thorn in Israel's side for the rest of Scripture. It's painting a picture for the kind of people. You get this story and the last story where Ishmael is sent away and God makes a declaration. He's going to become his own 12 nations of people. But they're not going to be people that most people want to deal with. And so this is kind of a doubling down. Hagar doesn't go to, back up to Haran, where Terah's family, where Abraham's family is from. You kind of get the picture that they're, the kind of people you want to associate with. She goes and gets his wife from Egypt. Egypt is the enemy of Israel all throughout this. So it's building this case that the family is now divided and they're going to war with each other.
And God even promises them twice.
Promises twice. Yeah.
Bless him with this.
He's going to bless him. But Abraham's descendants are going to wish that he hadn't.
Okay.
So you see what I'm saying? It's talking about where his family's from. It's talking about the kind of people he associates with. The company you keep. We kind of say those things as parents, don't we? You watch the people you keep. And she's going down and getting a wife from Egypt, not from amongst the civilized people, those, evil marauders and angry people who just want to conquer all the land. And that's the kind of person that the Arabs become, right? I mean, again, overgeneralization. But these stories are painting the picture of why Israel can't seem to find any friends. Does that make sense? To a certain degree, they're God's chosen and the other people aren't. But to a certain degree, they also kind of bring it upon themselves. Where'd John go?
It was a little boy.
I saw Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat with Natasha. Joseph's an arrogant little brat. And he treats his brothers not very kindly. And then whenever he gets into Egypt and he gets a position of power, he's not really a good guy. And they just keep doing this stuff over and over and over again. They don't really seem to learn the lesson. So even though, they're God's chosen people, everybody else is like, God, are you sure you chose the right one? And the reason I think that that's important is I am really coming to believe the great thing about our faith is we don't have a stylized story. none of our heroes outside of Jesus are actually good people. They have moments of righteousness. They have moments of goodness, but most of the time we're scratching our head thinking, God, you could have chose better. You probably should have chose better. And instead of him writing them out of the story, I think it reminds us over and over and over again that God is willing to work with anybody. And God chose some of the worst people on purpose. Because if he can work through them, we're not all that bad. But it should also cause us to want to be better. Right? And so here we have God's chosen man, Abraham, doing a lot of stupid stuff, not standing up to his wife when he should, and then when he does, it's not helpful, and then he ends up having two families that war with each other, and he makes a lot of bad decisions, but every so often he checks in with God and says, okay, well, let's reset. We're going to do it right for a little while, and it lasts for a little while, and then messes up again. And that should feel, unfortunately, all too familiar to us, shouldn't it? We do good for a little while, we follow God for a little while, we're doing really good and doing what God wants, and then all of a sudden we kind of get a little lackadaisical on it, and then next thing you know, uh-oh, God, I need to ask for forgiveness again. I messed this one up. Can you help me get out of this jam? Can you fix this for me, Lord? And God steps in and he does some good, and then we're like, all right, we got it. Well, I'm going to be good for a while, and we're good for a while, and then, well, it goes downhill. Feel familiar? And it's been that way since the very beginning. And the thing of it is where's God in all this? Is God up there shaking his head, wagging his finger, waiting to zap people and destroy everybody? No. I mean, even right here, it says God's waiting for either Hagar or Ishmael, someone to cry out. And in the moment Ishmael cries out, God comes down. God is waiting for us to turn to him. Sin doesn't separate God from us. Sin separates us from God. Do you see that? Here in this first book, we're only 21 chapters in. This is a 50-chapter book. And yet God's not the one who leaves. God's not the one who's unfaithful. God's not the one who doesn't abide by his word. God is always there, just waiting for them. Do you see it? So if you don't believe that that's true for you, read the book. Any other thoughts? I'm going to use a fancy term here. I'm going to apologize for it, but I'll give you the definition. Anybody know the word pericope? Spelled pericope. 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 It's a fancy word for a story. That's the end of that pericope. Now let's move on to the next one. Because maybe it'll get a little bit better. The rate we're going, probably not, but maybe it'll get a little bit better. Verse 22. 22 through 20, 22 and 23 is my next paragraph. At that time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, said to Abraham, God is with you in everything you do. Now swear to me here before God that you will not deal falsely with me or my children or my descendants. Show to me and the country where you now reside as a foreigner the same kindness I have shown you. What do you think? Yes, Caleb.
Pretty sad that people know that he's God's chosen one, but he's shady character.
You ain't kidding. They know he's God's chosen God, but they're asking for, can you Give us some assurances you're not going to deal a little shady with us again. What else do you think in these two verses? And Abimelech brings some muscle with him too, just to be safe. Brings the commander of his army with him. You fooled me once, Abraham. I don't want you to do it again. Treat me good so we can be copacetic, so everything can be okay. Is that what you see in here, or am I reading that wrong?
Well, he says he treats him with kindness the way he treated him with kindness. So,
Yeah, Abimelech's being real clear. I've done my best to be good to you, Abraham. Can you say the same? What you got?
This is the guy that he told that Sarah was his sister.
That's the second guy that Abraham told that Sarah was his sister, and he took her into his household. You know, first one was Pharaoh down in Egypt, and then this is the guy who his women couldn't get pregnant, and they were starting to get sick and all this kind of stuff. So he's like, I don't want this happening again. I've been good to you. Be good to me.
And that just means king or whatever, ruler.
Abimelech means the king is my dad.
Oh, yeah.
The king is my daddy. It's a title. It means prince or the next ruler. Any other thoughts? We'll read the next two, 24 through 26. Abraham said, I swear it. Then Abraham complained to Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized. But Abimelech said, I don't know who has done this. You did not tell me, and I heard about it only today. What you think?
How many times before now has there been a well discussed? Because this is twice now. In 21 alone.
Two references to wells in this chapter, yeah.
Has it been talked about a lot already?
I don't.
Because that means a lot later on.
The notion of a well is an important reality in the wilderness. I mean, it's not a minor thing, you know. I mean, Hagar was ready to give it up and just let herself and her son die because she couldn't find water. So the fact that there was a wells, you dug them. I told you guys I grew up about an hour to the east of here. I grew up in the White River Valley. And where I grew up, you dug down and you put a point in the ground. But where I grew up, you could stick a 6-foot point in the ground and get all the water you wanted. It was not a big deal because we were in the river bottom. Where my dad built the house that he just sold outside of town, he had to dig down 20 feet and put, you know, concrete cylinders in before he could finally get to the water table. It's not an easy thing. You know, most of our cities now, they have sewer systems and water systems, and we build water towers because water is important. You got to have water to live. And so everywhere that they found a river, a lake, a pond, if they could dig a well, that was a place of life. And if it's a well, that means it was dug. They went digging for it, not a minor task. So, to a certain degree, Abraham's got a reason to gripe. But it feels a little presumptuous to me that Abraham immediately would say, yeah, I swear I'll be nice to you, but hey, what about your people who stole our well? I don't know. Any other thoughts? Keep going? We'll keep going. 27 through 29. So Abraham brought sheep and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a treaty. Abraham set apart 7 ewe lambs from the flock, and Abimelech asked Abraham, "What is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs you have set apart by themselves?" Any thoughts? Keep reading. Okay, next paragraph. 30. He replied, "Accept these 7 lambs from my hand as a witness that I dug this well." Thoughts?
Why was that a witness?
He's saying, I am being honest in this. I'm giving you these 7 sheep this is my word. If you accept these, then you're agreeing with me that this is my well. He's doing twofold. One, he's saying that I'm telling the truth, and 2, I'm buying it back.
Wait, but did he actually dig the well?
Me, just being very clear right now, I don't know that I always trust Abraham's dealings with anybody else other than God, because God knows his heart, but
Cause my she says dug the well, not that this is my well, that I dug it.
it seems to imply that he's at least claiming that he dug the well, yes.
Should be.
Who do you think shady?
This part is from shape.
Who's the shady one though?
Abraham. I don't know who dug that well. I think he's just saying, here's my sheets.
What are you saying about God's chosen?
There's a lot of shady people in this world that love to lie. Okay, we can hear. People are shady.
People are shady, and even God's people sometimes are shady. And apparently even God's friend Abraham that God talked to face a number of times, even though he's seen God talk to him face to face, he's still a little shady. And again, that gives me some hope. Because, I mean, on my bad days, I'm not all that great. I'm hoping that God can overlook that, because he overlooked Abraham, right? Finish the story? Let's finish the chapter. Yeah, go for it, Crystal.
Is there a reason why it's 7 lambs?
That's what.
Is there a significance between the 7?
I mean, my gut wants to say that 7 is God's perfect number. It's the number of completion. But that wouldn't mean anything to Abimelech, I don't think, because we don't get the impression that Abimelech was really all that much of a God-fearer, except for, whenever God visits him in a dream in the middle of the night. But yeah, I don't know other than that, really.
You think Abimelech is sitting here going, listen, I don't think you actually dug that well, and you want to give me 7 of my old sheep back to me after you try to give me your sister?
In case you couldn't hear, she's acknowledging this point that I had all but forgotten. Remember that when Abimelech had taken Sarah into his household, and then he found out what was going on, he gave Abraham all kinds of sheep and donkeys and male and female slaves. So these could have been Abimelech's to begin with.
And now Abraham's getting loud.
Let's finish the chapter and see. 31 through 33. So that place was called Beersheba because the 2 men swore an oath there. After the treaty had been made at Beersheba, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and there he called on the name of the Lord, the eternal God. And Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines for a long time. So Abraham gets sheep, and goats and oxen and camels and slaves and money from Abimelech. He gives some of them back and gets a well that he might or might not have dug. And now he's living in the land with them relatively at peace.
And this fulfills God's promise. The Sheba is the promised land, like for that, right?
That's in the Philistines lived right along the coast here. So this area right here is kind of where we're talking about. And he lived there for a long time, living amongst people who eventually, the Philistines, do we think of them as good people or bad people? We tend to think of them as bad people. But for this season, during this act of the play, they're relatively at peace because Abraham, by Kaylee's point, has outmaneuvered and outnegotiated Abimelech.
First car salesman.
Abraham is a used car salesman. He sold Abimelech's shirt back to him somehow and got to live in the land for free. Ooh, I just saw what the next chapter is. We got 25 minutes.
Go for it.
All right, why not? Let's see if we can get through 19 verses in 25 minutes. We've only done that maybe once or twice, but we'll try it. Chapter 22. Let's do verses 1 and 2. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to Abraham, Abraham, here I am, he replied. Then God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mountain I will show you. Thoughts?
He's asking him to do something he'd rather not do.
You think?
Yes. Most definitely.
Does God give him a whole lot of wiggle room here?
No. He says do it.
Take your son, your only son, the only one that's with you, Isaac. Just to be clear, you're not going to go get Ishmael. This is Isaac. And take him to Moriah, sacrifice him there as a burnt offering. Now, have we heard that language yet? Burnt offering? You know what that means?
In the ark.
We got the burnt offering conversation after the ark. We had a little bit of burnt offering discussion with Cain and Abel, but there's a difference between an offering and a burnt offering. Do you know the difference? You probably don't because we haven't read Leviticus yet. An offering, a part of it is given to God and everybody else gets to eat it. A burnt offering means the whole thing is burnt up. No one gets to participate. This is not let's cut some of Isaac's hair and throw it on the altar as our offering to God and we're going to call it good. This is a burnt offering. Isaac's not just going to be partially dead, he's going to be mostly dead. In fact, he's going to be completely dead.
He's going to be cremated.
He's going to be cremated.
But it doesn't be really hard yet. Does Abraham know what that means yet?
But I think he would.
This is a very common practice among the other gods.
That's why we don't hear about it. He would know.
That's why we don't hear about it, but he would absolutely know. To a certain degree, this should cause us a lot of concern. Because is God like the other gods? What did God say about killing people? Don't do it. And when you do it, their blood cries out to me. I know that this is going on. Something here should not compute. Do you get that? Anything else or any other thoughts?
Well, you implied that the only son that's with you, that's not what it says.
Yes, that's his only son, which means he has completely separated himself from Ishmael now. For all practical purposes, Ishmael has been written out of the will. He's getting nothing. Anything else? Keep going. Okay. 3 through 5. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." So what do you notice?
Verse 2. It seems strange to me that Abraham does not plead for another way.
Yeah, it seems really weird. Abraham's not pleading for a different way. Absolutely.
He's reached his breaking point, and he's just like, there's nothing else I can do, I just have to listen to this.
Maybe finally Abraham has given up trying to manipulate his way out of things. Very well could be. What else do you notice, Jeff?
So his servants what was going on.
He didn't tell his servants what was going on. What you got, Kaylee?
Okay.
2 things.
We will come right back.
Abraham says, "We're coming back." What's the second thing?
This is the first time we mentioned worship.
And this is the first time that Abraham's talked about going to worship God.
I think is it the first time in Genesis it mentions worship?
That's a good question.
Because I have a little side note written in my margin, the first mention of worship, not just Abraham, but the circle.
Let's see how good the Google is.
Maybe he's going to plead. Maybe that's.
Oh, yeah, you know, that last chapter we just had, Abraham was quite the negotiator and kind of, you know, he worked things out in his benefit. Maybe he thinks he's going to work things out in his benefit with God, too. What is the first? Oh, come on, stop.
So this is the very first time the word worship is mentioned in the Bible, period.
So there you go. And that's what I was just looking up, and you're faster than me because my fat fingers kept messing it up twice. So this is the first mention of worship. Abraham clearly is telling, at least he hasn't told Isaac what's going on. He hasn't told his servants what's going on. Who's missing from the story at this point?
Why?
The wife. Do you think Abraham told Sarah what was going on?
No, she wouldn't do that. Yeah, I'd be in big trouble.
When is he not in trouble?
Well, that's a good question, Sam.
Yeah, but if this is his first act of worship, obedience, and service to God, I would not consider Sarah. If this is my heart to God, he comes first.
This seems to be the first true time where God is being worshiped, and Abraham is just submitted. And yet, he says very clearly yes to what God has asked, but he's told the servants, we're both coming back.
Don't know if he knows for sure what is actually being asked to do yet.
Keep reading.
Yeah.
We want to get this. If we want to get the story done, we're going to have to keep reading. We'll go 6 through 8. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac. And he himself carried the fire and the knives. As the two of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father, Abraham, Father. Yes, my son, Abraham replied. The fire and the wood are here, Isaac said, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the two of them went on together. Is Isaac a son? As in, is Isaac a little boy at this point?
He's carrying the wood on his shoulders.
He's carrying the wood for a burnt offering on his shoulders.
Dude in the bush.
The interesting thing about this is in the Hebrew, it implies he is an unmarried man. He's not a man proper because he's not married. But this is not a boy anymore. What else do you notice?
He realizes something is up.
Isaac, for all that we talked not so great about him earlier, he realizes something's going on here. He's no dummy. He knows what a burnt offering is. He knows what a sacrifice looks like. He sees what's going on. Got something, or do I keep going?
It's so intense right now because I just imagine Abraham coming from this true deep place of such. I hope that he's actually broken right now. You know what I mean? Like that would be the only thing that my heart can fathom. That he is just so bottom of the pit that all he can do is just absolutely, without question, follow what God is telling him to do right now.
Well, let's keep reading because I want to get to the end because this is an interesting story. And when I finally really paid attention to it and read it, I noticed things I had never paid attention to before. So I want us to get there. So verses 9 through 11. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Here I am, he replied. What do you notice?
Two things.
Go for it.
Isaac should be getting suspicious by now.
Well, by the time his dad's banging him up, tying him up, and putting him on top of the pile, yeah, I think it was.
Says, we think he's a grown man. Says, Abraham bound his son and then laid him on the altar. Now that sounds like a little boy now.
Bare minimum. What's this say about Isaac?
Trust.
He trusts. He is far more obedient than Abraham has been up to this point, is he not? He asks good questions. He very clearly understands what's going on, and yet he submits anyway. What?
But Abraham knows God's promises, and he knows that through Isaac, he's getting more descendants. So if he actually kills off Isaac, he won't have it. And that means that God's promises aren't true.
Yeah.
So maybe he falls in the back of his head and thinks, God's going to stop this from happening.
He doesn't know. Yes, God has been faithful up to this point. But notice, it says very clearly in here that he took the knife and he was ready to slay him. This is the word that's used for premeditated murder. There is no coming back from this.
Well, the teaching that I've heard for was that he expected God to resurrect Isaac.
And I've heard that myself. The notion of resurrection almost had to have been a reality if he is willing to truly kill his son, but he believes God's promises. God would bring him back. He says God's going to provide the land.
It'd be God's premeditation, by the way, not Abraham's premeditation. It'd be God's.
It was a 3-day journey. That's premeditated.
By God.
Well, in the court of the law, it doesn't matter if it was God's original idea. 3 days with all the planning, and he put the wood and the fire and the knife, and he took Isaac up on the law's going to say, yep, you've been thinking about this for a while, Abraham. Anything else? Go for it, Jeff.
God was really testing his faith.
God is absolutely testing him in a way that we don't fully comprehend. Let's keep going. Verse 12. Do not lay a hand on the boy, he said. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. What do you think? Keep going.
Would the boy trust his father after this?
Really good question. If you're Isaac, do you trust Dad after this?
I would.
Has Abraham really given anybody a reason to trust him? No. I mean, let's keep going. 13 and 14. Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide. And to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. What do you notice? Anybody know where tradition says this took place? According to tradition, there is a rock that they believe this took place on, and it's in Jerusalem, where the Temple Mount is, and where the Dome of the Rock for the Muslims is. This is all the same place. Also, the place where Jesus was crucified. Not quite Golgotha, but they're all right on the same mountain in the same place. Now, what do you notice? When Isaac asks him, where's our sacrifice? What does Abraham say? God will provide what?
A sheep. Mine says a sheep.
Yours says a sheep. Mine said a lamb. What does God actually provide?
Ram.
A ram. Now, this is incredibly important, but we wouldn't realize it yet because this is not our culture. If we flip forward a couple of books and we go into the book of Leviticus, sacrificing a ram is used for one purpose. You know what this is? Anybody? What?
Sin offerings.
It's not just a sin offering. It's meant for consecration. That someone is being set aside for God's purposes.
Saving somebody's life.
It is saving somebody's life, but this is very clearly meant for something very holy. What?
It's Jesus.
It is Jesus, but there's more to it. Keep going. 15 through 18. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me. Why would God ask Abraham to sacrifice his child?
He was tested.
He was testing him, but why?
See if he'd obey him or not.
Remember how Abraham begged God to try and let Ishmael be the child of blessing? Why won't you just go through him? And God has made him put Ishmael away. How do you think Abraham treats Isaac? His only son. You got to put away the other one. His son of old age, the son of the promise. How do you think Abraham treats Isaac? What you think?
Very precious.
Very precious, maybe coddles him. Could it be that for Abraham, Isaac borders on being an idol? Can you see that? That God would say, you're supposed to be, what'd you say this was the first time it was mentioned, Kaylee?
Worship.
Worship. You are meant to worship God alone. And God has asked him to sacrifice Isaac because it's implying Abraham was all but worshiping Isaac instead of God. Can you see that picture? God will never be second place. And God will tell us to lay on the altar anything that we put in front of him. And it doesn't say it explicitly, but it all but implies that God's saying, you better make sure that you're following me, Abraham, not something else. Not my promise, not the one I said I was going to work through. You follow me. You worship me. I am to be your primary focus. Nothing else. And when Abraham realizes this and he's willing to say, okay, Lord, I trust you. You said you're going to provide me children through Isaac. I'm going to trust you. You're going to bring him back after I burn him up. I trust you. You'll provide the land, the sacrifice. I trust you. But he has to go all the way through with it. Because up until this point, Abraham has always, for the most part, put God first. But this all but seems to imply that Abraham has not been for a while. Let's finish this. Verse 19. Then Abraham returned to his servants, and they set off together for Beersheba, and Abraham stayed in Beersheba. So what do you notice?
Then they.
What?
I said then they.
Yours says, then they returned to his servants?
Yeah.
It doesn't say then Abraham?
Then they.
Now that's what one's supposed to be. Says Abraham.
To be clear, the Hebrew says, then Abraham returned.
Watch those.
Why would two different English translations say two different things? What did Abraham say going up the mount?
But they would return.
Abraham says, we will return. The Hebrew says, Abraham returned.
They didn't answer why though, I'm so confused on why they reached different translation. Cause those are big translations.
It's a very big difference. According to the Jewish rabbis, Abraham took Isaac up. Abraham had all but created an idol out of Isaac. God asked Abraham to lay down his idol, and God provided a ram for consecration. God took Isaac from Abraham, period. Abraham doesn't return with Isaac. Isaac is consecrated to the Lord. And according to tradition, Isaac goes and studies with Melchizedek to become a priest. He is consecrated as a priest to God Most High. Abraham goes up the mountain with the son. Abraham comes back down one way. Isaac goes down a different way.
There has to be some reason why half of our Bible say day and half of them say.
Because we don't like the notion that Abraham had to leave his son behind. Period. So because he made the promise that they were going to come back, many English translations fulfilled that promise by saying they both come back. But as we're going to see next week, when we read into chapter 23, if you pay attention to the details, it actually paints a very different story. And with that, it's time to end. Until next week, let's pray. Lord, your word tells us to put you first. You call us to worship you above all else. And Lord, sometimes your word also gives us stories that don't always make sense. Lord, give us clarity that as we seek to follow you, that we wouldn't fall into the traps that we've seen set by the enemy before Abraham. But Lord, that we would truly follow you and follow you alone. May you be glorified in us, even when we don't always understand you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.